Kia ora, Laurel Barr, ko Laurel Barr taku ingoa. I'd like to acknowledge the Te Atiawa and Ngāti Toa tribes that are local to our area here, just as an acknowledgement. So my name is Laurel Barr, and I come to you with my degrees in painting and in art education. I'm mainly a practicing artist and an educator, and I'm keen on making the world a better place through art and education. I'm currently lecturing in the Bachelor's of Animation and Honors courses at UB Colleges of Creative Innovation here in Wellington campus. I'm here today to talk to you about the wonderful time our animation students and those who go on to the gaming sector spend in learning and how we support them. I have a keen interest in this area since my university days and enjoyed my classes where we investigated learning diversity. It was in university that I was finally diagnosed with dyslexia, dyscalculia, and audio processing disorders. It was a relief and a confidence builder when I finally was able to achieve straight A's and was a Dean's List scholar after I had had a first semester of a couple D's. It opened the door to success for me to make sure that all students get the support and people of neurodivergent natures get the support they need to succeed, and became a focus for me. I now work to make sure that all students get the support that they need and succeed to be in the concept of stopping asking students to reach out and for us to instead, and myself, to reach in. I've been doing research into best practice for neurodivergent tertiary students using a co-design methodology for a couple years now. I'm also known as the fun auntie because I overheard some students calling me. They said, "What's Laurel like?" And they said, "She's the fun auntie who gives you 50 cents to go to the dairy and gives you knowledge with it." So I don't think that's too shabby. With it being a relatively new branch of campus with our Wellington campus, we've been there for 5 years at that location. We have been able to follow a contingency of students with new eyes and reflect on what's working best and what isn't. We've taken time to look at what the students need and going on into the employment sector to be their best selves and reach out for their own goals and accomplishments. There we go. So one area that we've been following with interest and dedication is how we work with neurodiverse students, for which reasons we haven't quite figured out yet. Perhaps our reputation for success has had relatively high numbers in our Bachelor's of Animation compared to other institutions. The average number of neurodiverse students in the general population, or neurodiverse people in the general population, is 15%, and our campus has 40% declared neurodiverse population. And this has caused us to kind of pause and consider every student and how we can encourage the success, and even more so for our neurodivergent students, to be inclusive of all their needs. So what is neurodiversity? It's a relatively newish term that describes a wide range of neurological differences that we all kind of fall into this spectrum somewhere. It's a word that encompasses conditions like dyslexia, dyspraxia, formerly called Asperger's syndrome, autism, ADHD, and other conditions that have previously been termed disorders. The history of it goes back to the 1970s when disability activists were bringing up issue with the medical model and the definitions of disability. In general, this is the sentiment that having a condition was something that needed treatment. Instead, they put forth the notion that these disabilities were just a part of the range of all people. They also pushed for the previously labeled medical conditions to be part of a more social model structure, which sees disability as a person's experience of the world mingling with the environment that they're in. It now looks at individuals and their needs. But if you've met one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism. The terminology of the word neurodiversity came from the late 1990s, so relatively recently, when I was doing my degrees in art education. Comes from Judy Singer, who was a disabilities rights activist from Australia. She premised that the variety of neurological differences should just be a part of the human experience and not medicalized, and those with the conditions should carry forward with acceptance and no stigmatization. The word and concepts now transverse into fields of education, the working world, and psychology. Neurodiversity encompasses people with neurological differences and their unique way of working and strengths. It also encourages inclusivity and challenges society to make adequate changes to help people thrive with accommodations and support. When given minimal support measures, often neurodiverse people can use their skills and talents to make for a better society. Now, 25 years or so from when the term was coined, there's still a lot to do to fully embrace neurodiversity. We need to inform and educate the public, potential employers, and society about how neurodiverse people can succeed. It's still an emerging field, marching forward slowly with the support as it grows. There are societal views that have been predominant for a long time and have had individuals pushed into hospitals and prisons based on their neurodiversity. We need to challenge prior misconceptions and change stereotypes. When I was in university around that time, the term of neurodivergence was taking off. There was a strong interest in the education field centered around these themes. This theory centers, one of the pioneers in this subject was Howard Gardner and his theory of multiple intelligences. This theory centers on how the individual learns and has learning preferences and skills that we can dedicate educational focus to support. One celebrated aspect of this theory is that it branches out into how one learns. There are 8 multiple intelligences that we all have differing levels of knowledge, abilities, and preferences. There's visual spatial, linguistic verbal, interpersonal, intrapersonal, logical mathematical, bodily kinesthetic, and natural. Lesson plans since this era have taken these styles into account to cater for individual learning needs rather than en masse. For example, a bodily kinesthetic learner is the one who has to move around and has trouble focusing by sitting still for lengths of time. So best practices is said to make sure that you are enabling this kind of learner to engage on that level with physical games or dance or allow for fidget spinners. This is something that traditionally has been ignored by the tertiary sector, falling to traditional lectures. It's a theory of learning that I still create my lesson plans on in hopes to reach out to the students who otherwise might miss learning in ways that they learn best. Students with official diagnoses and those that can neither afford or are comfortable with diagnoses often fall through the cracks. Dropouts in tertiary are prevalent for neurodiverse people. So what makes for a successful course or successful environment that enables all learners to succeed? Inclusivity, when everyone accepts others with open arms, neurodiverse individuals can feel supported. This means that we need to look at what works for them and how we can support them to be their best unique selves. By looking at best practice in an evolving field, adjusting policies, and advocating for a wider spectrum of inclusivity, we enable being able to fit in and thrive. Recognition. By feeling free to be who they are with confidence and without stigmatization, neurodiverse people benefit from awareness of their plights. Education about neurodiversity and the stories will help them face challenges with support. And advocation. We can look at the rights of humanity, employment, education, and health for individuals who are neurodiverse and advocate for their inclusion. By looking at discrimination, we can also look at what rights need to be enforced. Over time, we've learned ourselves, stopped and reflected on what has come before, the good, the bad, the indifferent. We all have new barriers to overcome and trials and tribulations in this area. But by continually looking at what's best for our learners and our employees, we can't go wrong. So what is working and has achieved our 98% neurodiverse students having completed their course successfully and thriving? Learner support. Our school has a department whose sole focus is learner support. This can take on many forms, from helping students to navigate the new world of academia with resources to support students in mental health crises. They take students that are referred to them or who self-nominate themselves for support, which other institutions rarely do. When a student arrives at the school with a learning diagnosed need, they are signaled to the learning support staff, who offer time and dedicated attendance or attention should the student want or need it. And tutors are made aware of the student's needs based on learning support meeting with the student. They are often students that tutors become aware of that have missed being diagnosed or simply in the range of the spectrum that encompasses learning diversity, and these students are offered individualized support both in and out of the classroom, regardless of having a diagnosis, which can be very expensive to seek, and as well as waiting lists of several years. We also have, on our bachelor's course, we've devised the class numbers to below 25, most generally around 15. In your first year, you have all classes with the same cohort of students, and this makes more of a chance for students to get to know each other as they take on a new environment in their next stage of learning. By getting to know each other, it raises chances for students to support one another. And second year classes may take on transfers from other courses, so there's a new chance to meet as the second year starts. A significant focus on academic coursework. So being able to figure out how a student works best in that environment is a priority. Students also in the second year begin to work in groups on animation work, as in the employment field group projects. This sees them figuring out what they enjoy, what they're good at, and how to communicate with others. By the third year, we as the staff know the individual students very well. By year 3, they focus on a capstone group project of a finished animation or game that runs throughout the year. They're also involved with individual research projects. And at the end of the second year, the students are able to pitch for potential projects that the groups will work on in the third year. We tutors create groups based on interests, personalities, work ethic, and range of skills, as well as learning needs. Because the students work with one another all year long, they get to know each other very well, and either end up as good friends or bickering like siblings, basically. The group project is meant to mimic the animation industry that they'll be entering, where animators are forced to work, make things work, communicate effectively, and work through processes as a team. Positive environment. When a neurodiverse student embarks on a new journey, especially one of learning, it can be scary, or start in employment. It's a new world for all students, but those with learning barriers are particularly at risk of what can be deemed as a failure. And maybe coming to tertiary education having struggled in school and socially. And in order to keep students happy, healthy, and learning, we have dedicated time and energy to making a space and environment that all can feel special in creating a positive environment that celebrates diversity. We have paid attention to what students want and need in order to thrive. On campus, we have some breakout areas for students that need quiet and comfortable room. There are meeting rooms to host clubs and student-organized meetings, and student representatives from each class help out to articulate students' needs, requests, interests, and other issues. We also have a student support dog who comes into class or can be used for calming agitating students or brought in for any meetings that the student may want her present in. Learning agency. This is the time to teach students to have assertive voices. They carry unique perspectives, and it's our job to validate their experiences. When possible, we give out options and choices that reflect how they learn best and work with them in the decision-making processes. We encourage connections with others in building their own resilience. In terms of animation specific, most students already come with a passion for animation. As a student on most animation courses, there will be time devoted to learning all kinds of animation, from stop motion, cell animation, or developing up into 3D AAA games. A lot of time is devoted to learning software to create most animations, which can be a steep learning curve for someone who might find it hard to follow instructions. So using tools to help navigate new programs and new academic work is a priority for us. Excuse me, modes of learning. We encourage students to find their own way of working best. This might mean recording sessions to play back later, assistance to take notes, having the lecture slides in advance to follow along with, playing sensory toys like fidget spinners, stuffed animals, or Rubik's Cubes when they're frustrated, having an emotional support friend attend class with them. Staff are encouraged to use dyslexic-friendly fonts in their presentations, and students use text-to-speech software while reading texts in heavy academic journals, and speech-to-text software to verbally translate their speech into written text for assignments. Individual care and attention. We help students and individuals learn with lots of one-on-one time to make sure they understand what they're supposed to be doing. We also have instituted what's called Q time, or quality time, where we spend significant amounts of time looking at getting to know them better as individuals, their goals, and any learning barriers that they might have. Respect for cultural diversity. By getting to know the students as individuals, we are able to learn about their cultural diversity, whether it's ethnic groups, gender diversity, or where they may change their names sometimes many times, and celebrate their mental health journeys. This allows them to feel safe in learning, even if the big feelings and tricky situations arrive. Preparing to succeed. We run under the assumption that the student will thrive with accommodations. For example, my classes, which are very lecture heavy, not by my own design necessarily, all students are able to give me their assignments in advance before a deadline to get feedback before submission. This has enabled students to succeed in it and achieve high marks. In general, what accommodations help neurodivergent students and people help us all. So if you think of an elevator or lifts, it's a necessity for some people, but it helps all of us. So what can neurodiverse population bring to game development? In general, things like the ability to do repetitive jobs and creativity and innovation works well with game development. which can be a trait of some neurodiverse people. Dyslexics bring creativity and innovation, visual articulating both in 2D and 3D information. Autistics have a strong logical thinking and ability to concentrate intensely and have attention to details, understanding sequences and rules. And ADHD brings high energy vibes. So there's a few case studies I want to tell you about. When one student came to us, he was fresh out of high school with a diagnosis of autism and specifically Asperger's syndrome, which is not necessarily used anymore. He was diagnosed when he was 3 and didn't speak until he was 6. He was fortunate to have strong advocates in his family, so wonderful family support, and his mother attended his classes with him in year 1 to ensure that he was able to have the support for his learning and knowledge. In year 2, he started recording the whole classes that were lecture heavy so he could make sure that he was able to review the classes at home and make sure he covered all his bases. Well, he struggled socially, majorly, to navigate group animation work. We facilitated communication with the rest of the group at times. And they generally stepped up to help make it work for everyone and keep everybody happy, productive, and learning. He graduated from the Bachelor's of Animation at the top of his class and went on to thrive in his honors study. He has helped us to develop our course by making recommendations that we've implemented to help those with autism to succeed and the course to be more accessible to those with different ways of learning and communicating. Another student with a prior diagnosis of Asperger's was extremely shy and reclusive when he started, trembling if he had to speak even to anyone in his class, and barely able to say a word to other students or teaching staff without obvious uncomfortability. By second year, he was working in a group with amazing insights and able to communicate with interactions. And by third year, he was very brave in making jokes and able to do presentations at ease without stuttering. He turned out to be an A student by then and was the director and leader of his group game animation. A third case study was a transfer into year 2 from a more practical-based and less academic diploma of animation. She was autistic, had ADHD, dyslexia, and stumbled in her communications. She was struggling to focus in class on her assignments, so we worked with her every week outside of class to ensure that she understood the tasks at hand and interpreted in a way that she understood. She used the student support dog regularly to calm her when she was frustrated or overwhelmed. And she went from failing to a B+ student who smiles and laughs and became a very active contributor to her group work. She got a job before she finished the course and was able to shine through to attract employers. While we focused on tertiary study and how to thrive, it's equally important to where the students go from there. We have sessions on how to gain employment and skills with things like eye contact, refining tasks and new role communications, and helping employers understand how they work best. We've worked with the local industry employers who are open to building resources and ways of working that help neurodiverse population to show that they are true assets in the workplace when often given very simple accommodations. We work with neurodiverse professionals who help neurodiverse students to learn how they best articulate their needs, and I would recommend employment facilities to also do that. So what can you do? Ask, don't assume something about somebody. Don't go into the diagnosis and the stereotypes that are involved. Be flexible with alternative ways to communicate verbally or written, and different communication styles that might suit somebody best. When giving tasks, be very specific and don't allow for reading between the lines. Space things out in a schedule and have an agenda for meetings. Allowing things for things like headphones, quiet rooms, fidget toys, letting people knit or draw while you're doing meetings. Be patient. Things take time with some people. Often those with neurodivergent learning styles may not like to be touched or lack eye contact and could be overwhelmed with lots of people, so possibly the need for shorter meetings. Some people prefer to not let others know their conditions by masking, and so just generally take people as they are without any judgment. Simplify tasks, possibly use visuals, Trello for time management, and give alternatives to any presentations they might be required to do. In general, be flexible, encouraging, and accepting that we are all different and have different needs, and that's a beautiful thing. While we're always looking for new and better ways to reach our students, we are developing best practice in our approaches. I hope that you'll be able to walk away with a deeper understanding of neurodiversity and how we can all work together and succeed if we try to embrace differing needs as unique individuals. Thank you. In my email, I'm still very open to collaborating with people and connecting with people. We've got lots of information to share amongst us. So my email there is thinksideways@gmail.com. Thank you.